Hi, everyone. This is Caroline with Expat Interviews Thriving Abroad. And as usual, I am in the company of the most amazing people. I feel so blessed. And today is no exception. I'm with the positive, the motivational, the uplifting, the beautiful spirit of Miss Nicole Anne Marie. And thank you so much, Anne Marie, for joining me. I am so blessed and honored to have you today.
Thank you for having me. Your energy is so sweet and warm.
Yes, and I'm getting it from you. So I'm anxious to get started with your story. You have a wonderful story. And I know everybody's wondering, where is she? Could she be in Alaska or
I
is she?
know. Okay, it's freezing in my house. It's freezing in my house. I just turned the heat on. Please don't judge me. But yeah, it's cold in Shanghai, and I was in my bedroom wrapped up, and I don't keep the heat running.
So you are in Shanghai, China, freezing,
Yeah,
living your best life, but you're just a little cold right now.
I'm a little cold right now.
That's okay. That's okay. So tell us, how did you, I know that wasn't your first stop from New York. You're originally from New York.
Correct. Yes, from New York City, the Bronx specifically,
I hear that
and
accent. I hear it. I hear it.
yes. This is my seventh year overseas. My first country was the United Arab Emirates, UAE, and I was there for 5 years. And then I made it on to Shanghai, this is now my second year. So yeah, I am a teacher by trade and actually transitioning into more women empowerment and coaching, mindset coaching. I say soul and mindset because, I think you have to get both right to make like the best shifts in your life.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to talk with you. I feel like, after our last year, a lot of people are shifting in mindset. And, and it's gone both ways. It's gone in a very positive direction. And for others, it's gone in a very negative direction. But, what was it like? Because you were in China during the COVID. What was that like for you being there as an
You know
expat?
what's crazy? Because so we have Chinese New Year, which is why I'm off now for a month. And I actually went to New York for 2 weeks. And that's when it got really bad here. But something in my mind just said to go back to China. I know my parents would look at me like I was crazy. I actually stayed in New York for one more week and left in the midst. That's when it didn't even hit the US yet. And it came to China. And I decided, I don't know, my intuition, honestly, just said to come back. And of course, my mom was like, stay. I came back and immediately the second day after arriving back, everything was pretty much on lockdown. We didn't have a curfew, but pretty much the compound where I live, they told us that we had to like stay. They told us, if we need to leave, we have to sign out. We couldn't have like visitors in. It was like a ghost town. It was definitely a ghost town. And like for me, sometimes my processing is very delayed. Like I don't think I felt that it was so severe because in my mind, I think for me, just liking to be in my own space, I was just happy to be kind of home. And it was only until like maybe a week after I was like, okay, this is like really real. Like something is really happening here. How am I gonna just like process first, like being here? And like, of course, initially my parents were just like, see, like, are you okay? Kind of felt bad that I left. But I think that I just use it as an opportunity, to be honest. Like, I use it as an opportunity to be with myself, to meditate. I use it as time to exercise. And I think I just try to work with the situation, if you will. Thankfully, because I have Wi-Fi and I have, internet and I have a VPN, like I was able to be in constant communication. And I think that's what I did. Like, I felt my feelings, meaning thinking like, okay, this is like awkward. This is weird. I'm by myself initially. And then just kind of working with it, contacted some of my colleagues and see, try to check who's around, going to friends' homes, laughing about it, being annoyed by it. And I think I just did a combination of all those things. And I think it really helped to really deal or accept the situation.
Yeah, I think it was very interesting for all of us that were not in our own turf, you know, just being in another culture, and so that's interesting. So, what has it been like for you in China, Black woman? You know, we don't always hear all the you know the not so good stories. I mean, what has it been like for you, adapting to the culture or them
It's
adapting
been
to you?
quite interesting. I would say, okay, so the high is that, which I didn't recognize since leaving the UAE. You know, and the UAE was quite different in that, you know, I usually keep my hair shaved off. So if you ever looked at my pictures, you notice that my hair, I don't usually have hair. I always covered it up. So on the flip side, coming here felt like this kind of freedom to be creatively who I am. So like having my hair shaved off, walking around, and in that sense, it felt very freeing. Now, I do live in Shanghai, which is a major city, very international city. But even still, you do get stares. Like on the metro, sometimes you might see someone sneaking a picture, looking at you. I mean, I've had people come up to me and ask myself, even at my boyfriend, like, you know, can we take a picture of you? So there's still that little ignorant, there's still some of that wonder. And sometimes it can be very ignorant. Like sometimes you can feel it energetically feels like, you know, ignorant. And then sometimes it really does feel like wonder, especially when it's like a young child and you know they've probably never encountered like someone that looks like me. So it is really that mixed feeling. And just the same thing as taking taxis, you can tell when they're just so like not into foreigners at all. They have this thing where they think foreigners smell, and I think it's kind of like because we're perfume and cologne, where they'll open up the window and they'll say like, you know, foreigners smell, you know. And it's like the flip side. Sometimes we might say another culture, like if we're not used to certain fragrances, we might say that it doesn't smell. So I've had like this mixed feeling. Like there are moments when it feels like very positive and just like embrace. And then of course there are other times when you can, and you just know like it's a negative encounter. And you know, you move in ways with that. I think the most negative thing that I've experienced, I had a coworker, it's funny, and she said to me that I wasn't Black. Like she felt that the reason why I wasn't Black was because I was attractive. And I don't know like if she was trying to, and my colleague who's actually from the UK, she kind of just stopped her. She saw that I was in shock. You know, oftentimes you have these experiences, I find like, I think we all do, where something happens and you're so in shock that you don't even have a
You don't know how to
response,
respond. Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, because you're just
yeah.
like, what? And I think even just Black people as a whole, or anyone that's gone through any type of trauma or any type of like, I feel like we're so mindful on the words that we say because we know how it feels. So like, I know it would never fix my lip to like say like someone is like attractive or that they don't belong to. Like, I can't imagine myself telling the Chinese people, oh no, you're not Chinese, you must be Japanese. Like, you know what I mean? Or you're Korean. Like, but she said it, and she said it like with confidence. Like she really didn't realize like this is offensive. You're trying to tell me that Black people aren't attractive, so therefore I could like, yeah. So there are moments like that that I experience. I don't have them often, but when you do, it's still just that impactful that you think about it for weeks and hours. And you know, sometimes it just makes you feel like, I feel like you feel like a flip of both. Like for me, I feel a flip of both. One moment I feel, damn, sometimes I wish I was in New York City. Like maybe I should be with my own babies, meeting my students, and you know, they need me. And then I also think this is probably why I'm here. I get to be not an example, but another experience that they get to have because they are so limited in experiences of people that look like me, right? Um, and though I'll never speak for an entire race, an entire group, right? Because my experience is only my own, but I always think about, you know, I always have a quote that I always say, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I just feel like sometimes that's just what it is, even when it is like painful or annoying or like just not the most pleasant. Um, and I think it's just powerful, especially being an expert. You have to tell people, like, you know, like I told my boyfriend, like I shared it with someone. So I allowed myself to feel. And I think that's what helps me to be positive. Like I think it's because I feel the feelings. Like I don't try to act like, oh, it's cute. Like that. No, like I share the annoyance of like, I can't believe they just said this, or like, this is really happening. And it allows me to kind of know that what I'm experiencing is like, I have a right to have that feeling. But I would say outside of that, it has been a positive experience so far. It definitely wasn't like a place that's, most people say, I'm so shocked you live in China. And I always say, me too. I feel like it was like a soul choice to make to come here. Like I think being in the UAE, it's a little bit more, it has a lot of opulence and oftentimes can be perceived as very fake and inauthentic. And I think my soul was wanting to be somewhere where it's going to be real and raw. And it could be also the New York side of me as well. Like, I don't like the BS. Like, just tell me what it is. And I think so said, so done. So it's like, I'm here and I'm like, so that part I really do like of, you're going to get real all the time. So for right now, I do like, the cost of living here is very low. There's a beautiful metro system. So if you're like from New York City or any city with a metro, it's very easy to adjust to. There are a lot of people from all over the world here, but it's also big. I would say if I was comparing it to the UAE or just community-wise, we're so spread out. So I think creating community here is definitely more difficult than, let's say, when I was in the UAE.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't know someone's name, you just generally just know, you saw them before, you saw them on a Facebook group. Here it's so spread out. Like someone might say they're in China, but they might be in Xiamen, they might be in Nanjing, they could be in Beijing. Like we're so spread out. It doesn't necessarily mean I'll ever come across this person. So yeah, so that's been I know it's like a mouthful,
No, but
my
that's great.
experience so far.
It's good. It's good because many people are not hip to, the experiences that we have, especially in a place like China, which is a very different culture. I mean, that's a very unique culture. What about the expats there? Do you find there's a nice community of expats in general? Or do you tend to kind of mix in with the locals?
Yeah, so I've been actually I've become a little bit more intentional when mixing with locals and just like wanting to have Chinese friends, and not because of just a project, but I just feel like, how can I really understand the culture, understand the people if I don't ever like intermingle? And I do think it's easy as an expat, just for our comfort, we tend to want to hang out with only expats. And I think you always want to have that feeling of home. um for me, I spend a lot of my time when I speak with expats, I'm usually with more so my colleagues, more so than, I think the community is so hard. Just because of the reason I said, it's such a big city, it's harder to get together with people. The only way you can do that, I find it here, is when you're with, if you find things that you're interested in and then you meet expats in that way. So like for me, as I'm becoming a coach and a speaker, I have been going to a lot more entrepreneurial and women events. And naturally, as a result of doing that, I've met a lot of expats. So then we have like this shared interest. And now like we may hang out together, we go to each other's home. But it's far different from when I was in the UAE, when I was, let's say I was in like the black expats of like the UAE, and we were just together because we were all Black and we were from the States, So I also think sometimes just your purpose in a place also sometimes drive like the community that you create. And some just happen to happenstance just because you're like working in the same place. And then some could just be because of your interests. So it's a yes and a no. But I would definitely say it's more challenging here just because the city is so big in comparison to like being in the UAE. So I definitely say you definitely want to think about, like, one of the things that I tell people, the reason why I never want to be an expat coach is because I always say that it's not like the easiest thing to do. Just tell someone to become an expat. I think knowing your goal and knowing what it is that you want to experience will then help you, because you do need community. Like, you're not going to survive if you don't have community. Like, I'm going to tell you that. That's even if you're married, you got a boyfriend, you need some form of community. It's just, it's hard.
Yeah,
You'll struggle. You'll
definitely.
struggle.
Um, have you found yourself uh, taking on any Chinese cultural uh, um, idiosyncrasies, any little things that the Chinese do that you find yourself doing too?
I do. So they have a thing with drinking hot water. Like hot water is a thing. Like most times when you go to a restaurant, they give you hot water, maybe before meal or after meal. It had like helps with digestion. So I feel like it's funny when they see you as a Westerner, they automatically assume you want cold water. So now they're like very shocked, like if I like want hot water. So that's something that I've become really mindful. One of the things that I've been tackling too is like taking off my shoes before I get into the house. Um, which I feel like some people in the States do that, but I think it's such a thing here to take off your shoes. I think kind of like this bowing down, like, out of respect. I find sometimes I do that as well. Um, I think those three things right
So
now
those are,
are,
yes, the
are
things that you
like
picked up.
small. And I think that that's the beauty of being an expat. You kind of pick up some of, especially if something resonates with you in a positive way, you want to like add, it comes like part of your tool belt. And no one's ever asked me that too. I like that question. That's
I
a
have
good
to
one.
give I have to give my daughter credit for that because she watches all my interviews. She said, "Mom, that's a great question to ask," and I hadn't thought of it until she mentioned it to me because we do take on, sometimes
Yeah.
the things of the culture that where we live. So, okay, you've been in the UAE, you're in China. Is this a long-term place for you for now? Is it open-ended? Are you planning to be an forever expat? What does it look like for the
So
short term?
right now, currently I'm in a relationship. So now things change now when you're in a relationship because now you don't think about you just yourself.
Are you with a
So
local? Are you in a
I'm
relationship?
not. I'm actually with a Ugandan. So that's
Okay.
also like a whole nother conversation when you date someone who's also like not from America, because then you think differently. Um, so we said that we would stay here for 5 more years. Um, and then I don't know where's next. Like I would like to go to Colombia, to be honest. That's where I actually wanted to go to before China. Either Colombia or Portugal. I've never visited Portugal or Colombia, but like my soul just kind of said they wants to go there. So we'll see. Right now, I'm just playing it by ear. I do think I want to be an expat for a while. I think I'd eventually like to invest something in New York. I think, as I have children and that type of thing, like being able to, you know, visit my parents, I think that that's like important. So if I can do it in that way, I feel like I'm just open. I think that after you're living in a place after like 2 or 3 years, you see a lot of possibilities. You know, a lot of you just grow in so many ways, mentally, spiritually, physically, financially. And when all of those things are happening for you, the sky just really becomes the limit. Um, so now I just feel like I'm open. I literally feel like a free bird. Um, for real.
So that's nice to know because sometimes we talk about the fact that a lot of people, those of us that are expats for a long time, at least I try to tell people, hey, just go out and try it. You don't have to be an expat for the rest of your life. You might be just an expat for 6 months, for 1 year, for 2 years. So just kind of let the universe guide you and let it flow. And speaking of the universe and positive mindset, you're doing some incredible work with motivating women. Just I love your spirit. What are you doing it? I mean, are you trying to maybe uh, slowly move into that space of coaching? Is that something that you're moving into?
Yes, I actually did my first speaking event in Shanghai um last month. And I actually have another one coming up. Yeah, I really, if anything that I've learned, I mean, I've learned so many things from being overseas, but I really want to empower women, especially to like really know how to design a life that's really based on your own soul. Like, because I truly believe that like abundance flows and everything that you actually want actually happens. But it really, when you tap into that, and then of course, unblocking, because we all have blocks. We have like limiting beliefs, we have trauma, we have healing. I mean, we just have things that really are getting in our way. But this idea of designing a life that feels fulfilling, I think that we all have access to that. Um, And I think you only get to know that once you start discovering and asking yourself questions and just doing things like you said, like go and try living somewhere for a year. You'll I think we've been all prescribed this idea of how to live. And many of us, we do it and we're just like so unhappy in it. And you can feel it when you talk to someone. They never have anything good to say. Everything's a problem. But it's so different when you are living from a very fulfilling, soulful space. It's not about how much money you have in your account. Like when you're just doing things, when things just feel like they're in harmony, I think there's something to be really said about that. And I think most people are catching a wind of that, especially now with COVID, or people have lost jobs. People are like now just saying, you know what, let me just do that thing I've always wanted to do. And it just makes life more livable, more loving, and just it has like a triple effect. I feel like the way that you correspond with people. So I just think that the idea of like designing your own life is something that really resonates with me, and it's something that I've been able to do. And I'm still designing, because as I said, like I want to coach full time. Like I've been saying, I want to coach full time and speak full time and get paid to empower and uplift people. And I already see it for myself. So I think that one of the beauties of living overseas is that you actually can see it happen. Not saying it can't happen when you're living home, but you could actually like make it happen. Like because certain things are just no longer in your way, whether it's like having certain amount of bills, you know what I mean? Because financial stress is real. Emotional stress is real. Certain things you actually can take on quicker, I would say, than if you were back home and not having distractions. I mean, the beauty of being an expat too is that the part of being by yourself, the blessing is that you get to really look at yourself and like think about, okay, what do I value? Like, what do I really like? What do I hate? Because when you're home, it's easy to just go along with everything because everyone's doing it. But when you're by yourself, you get to really get to the core of who you are.
Yep. I wanted to get into a really quick question that I feel is so important. And since you're kind of touching on that, many, especially women, I need to say, who leave, let's say, the United States, the Western world, and they go abroad because they're running away, from a relationship, from trauma, from abuse, from all these myriad of negative things in their lives. Many of them go abroad to escape, but many of them don't really know that wherever you go, there you are. And where do we start to process? At what point do we, stop and say, hold up, wait a minute, it's me. It's not Mexico, it's not Panama, it's not China. It's actually me that needs to make the change.
Preach. I said that on a live I did recently. Like, I think I posted it as well. Like, that's been my biggest. You can't run away from those things. They come with you. The only beauty is that if you're bold enough to like say, oh snap, like this is the part that this, and actually get to work on it. Like, I'm a big proponent on like having a coach, if it's more so like mental blocks, but if it's like trauma or healing, I'm big on like getting therapy. Like, I have a therapist who's been so important and integral in my expat experience, because like you see yourself on a screen, so you get to like realize, I mean, are there things that are outside influences that have impacted me? Absolutely. But the beautiful thing is taking ownership from my part and like how I respond to it. So I always say you can't run away. It shows up. It may not be the first month or the first year, but it's going to come back. And then you'll find yourself like country hopping or start blaming locals and like all of that. And I'm like, no, sis, it's you.
or even other expats.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like I always tell people that I've done interviews and I'm like, listen, I knew that I wasn't escaping from anything, but I learned that I became very aware of who I am and like how I show up and like what my faults were and still are. And I did something about it. Like, and still doing something about it. I'm not here to say like I'm perfect. But I find that I have more peace and more contentment than I had before moving overseas. And less like, I guess, like animosity to certain people who I was once upset with. Like, you know, I might be tickled by or annoyed, but it doesn't like hold me up in the way that it used to before. Like I can see people, I just have certain tools that I didn't have before.
That you can detach from that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the last thing I wanted to ask you is, so you're going to be, coaching. If someone wants to reach out to you, for help, how can we connect with you on Instagram?
Yes, you can find me on Instagram, the Soulful Expat.
You're the soulful
Yeah,
expat. I like that.
yes, because I think everything comes from the soul, and I get to feel when people are operating from the soul, and use your ego as your driver, but don't let it like lead. Be in control of your ego, but
Right.
yes.
And that, let's start with why. What does that mean? I saw that and I wanted to ask you, let's start with why. Is that where we begin? Why?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, absolutely. You should always know why you're doing things. I think it helps you to lead from a very intentional place. And it also allows you to be honest, because sometimes our intentions aren't really pure. I try to check myself. Like if I'm going to say yes to something, is it because I really want to give? Am I being snarky? Is it because I've been hurt by something and now I'm doing it? I have those moments where I get to check myself. I think it just, and as I said, moving overseas, same thing. I don't think there's any judgment about your reason for why you're choosing, but at least know that for yourself. Like, why do I want to leave? Like, people know my story. When I first moved to the UAE, it was because I wanted to get out of debt. Okay, so I'll never like not lie, like say, oh, I was just wanted to see all the countries. Yeah, I want to do that too, but I really want to get out of debt. Like that's the real reason.
Right, right.
So I
You
mean,
needed the
the more
money.
honest you keep it with yourself, I think you have more growth, more peace, more abundance, more love, all those things.
I usually ask everyone for some last words of advice, but I think that you pretty much summed it up. There's no other way to say it. It's all about that connection within, and maybe sometimes being an expat allows us to really make. We need to be an expat to make that connection. Sometimes
I
it takes that.
agree. I agree. I agree. Yeah. Do something scary at least once in your life, or courageous or bold. Expat life might be that thing.
Yep. So, Nicole, I could talk to you for hours,
Yeah.
but I know you're freezing, and we want to. But I'm going to put the link for your Instagram, and hopefully anyone that is interested in reaching out to you
I'd
for
love
some,
it.
for just that little bit of motivation, that little push. And I want to thank you so much. It's been such a beautiful experience just sharing this moment with you. I wish you lots of blessings in your relationship in Shanghai and
Thank,
China, from
thank
here and
you.
beyond, wherever you go.
Thank
Lots of
you.
good
And you
wishes
too
for
in
you.
Mexico.
Yes, yes, yes. And you continue to live your best life, and
Thank
hopefully
you.
hopefully others will be able
Yes, they
to.
will.
Thank you so much. We'll talk
All
soon.
right.
Bye
All
bye.
right. Bye.